Well, good afternoon and welcome to our May Ranching 101 webinar presented by AgTrust. Today, you will hear from industry experts and learn how to make smart heifer retention decisions, keep the best, cull the rest, and build a more productive herd. Before we start, please join me for a short message from AgTrust.
When your passion is agriculture and a rural way of life, you need a partner who understands. That partner is AgTrust Farm Credit, formed from two trusted farm credit associations. Our mission is to provide personalized financing tailored for full and part-time farmers, ranchers, agribusinesses, and rural homeowners. And because we live in the communities we serve, AgTrust Farm Credit is here to help you succeed.
Today, we're excited to have a panel discussion on heifer retention and learn the impact it has on herd productivity and profitability. Today, we'll uncover key factors to consider when selecting replacement heifers, including genetic potential, reproductive efficiency, and long-term economic viability. Experts will share insights on management strategies, nutrition, and market trends to help producers make informed decisions that align with their operational goals, giving you the chance to gain practical knowledge to optimize your herd's future. Today we have Joe Jones joining us from Briggs Ranch. From Stalwart Ranch, we have Bill Cawley, and our moderator will be Miss Emily Lochner, TSCRA Executive Director of Events, Education, and Leadership Development. As always, if you have any questions during the webinar, please submit them in the chat box or the Q&A box below. And at this time, I would like to turn it over to Emily.
Ryan, well, Bill and Joe, we're so excited to talk today about replacement heifers. I think you mentioned before we started this call that y'all were both out. Bill said he was ultrasounding. I know Joe's family is, I think, AIing today. And so we are in the thick of it and in the heart of talking about replacement heifers and when we keep these and when we cull these. And so I've got a list of questions. We're just going to start talking about as you both go through your cow herds every year. Both of you are both very experienced. You've got decades in the industry. You've seen thousands of replacement heifers come through your programs or other programs. And kind of what are these things in the back of your mind that are happening subconsciously as you make replacement heifer decisions? And so we'll jump into some of these questions, but like Brian mentioned, for those of you that are watching, if you've got additional questions as we go along, please feel free to drop those in. We want to answer your questions, and we'll leave some time at the end too to talk about some of those questions that you've both got. And as we get through this, those of you that are watching will quickly realize both Bill and Jones are on the Bos Indicus side of things, and so you've both got Brahman influenced cattle. They're both in South or East Texas, and so y'all can talk a little bit about that and kind of the broader picture of the beef industry across the state of Texas as we go through. So I'm going to start off with probably the number one question that people are thinking about when we're thinking about replacement heifers as you're going through your herd. Talk to me. Let's start with phenotypic traits. Let's talk about the outside of the animal, what they look like. Bill, I'll start with you. When you are making replacement heifer decisions, what is your top kind of 3 to 5 things that you're thinking about from a phenotypic standpoint from a replacement heifer perspective?
Well, we are a Brangus operation, and I want those heifers to really show the Brangus characteristics. People come to us to buy Brangus females, and that means the correct amount of leather, not sloppy, not Angusy looking, look like a Brangus with sure enough bone on them. And you want those females to be really thick, really deep bodied heifers, because ultimately they're going to go on grass and have to utilize that grass. And we want these bigger, deeper bodied heifers.
Talk to me a little bit you mentioned Brangus, and for those of you that are watching, if you're not super familiar at this point, a Bos Indicus animal versus a Bos Taurus animal. Bos Indicus is going to have some Brahmin influence. Both Joe and Bill work with those kinds of animals. Why is leather important to you? Why is breed character important to you, Bill?
Well, for us, you have to have a way to cool those animals, that little extra hide on them, but also it makes them look like a Brangus. Every breed has their own look, and there's nothing wrong with any one breed. But if you're going into a certain breed, you want that breed of animal to look exactly like it's supposed to, where you're building a reputation for that kind of animal that you have.
Joe, from your perspective, when you're considering keeping replacements, what are the top things you're looking for phenotypically?
Well, Emily, we ranch in a lot of different environments and predominantly Santa Cruz and Brangus females, and we have a purebred herd of each. So it uh, it really kind of goes along together on both breeds of what we are looking for. Length of body, spring of rib, depth. You know, a lot of, as Bill said, a lot of the adequate amount of leather to go to a female to make them really look like a productive type of female. We try to stay away from the real tight wound, light bone type heifers that generally just go wind up being in the feeder section of our business. But you know, length of body, spring of rib, a lot of quality. Really need to look like a female to be able to make our first cut at the weaning time when we start branding our replacement heifers.
You both mentioned body, Joe or Bill. Why is body important? Why is that, commonly heard of as one of the top things that people look for?
Emily,
Really,
well, my deal is when you want that body, when I say body, I want a big spring of rib on that female because if they are tight gutted, where they are tubular looking, they will not be able to consume the amount of grass that that bigger rib-shaped heifer can. And being in the, we're predominantly all in East Texas, all of our ranching operations, and if they can't consume enough of this sorry grass, they will not be able to raise that good big stout calf like we want them to.
I'd have to go along with what Bill has contended on that wholeheartedly. I mean, you've got to have some volume to them for these cattle to be able to hold together. Those tubular type cattle that he's had described there, that's really a good description, because those cattle generally they just don't survive in the environment that we ranch in. And of course, our ranching operations are quite a bit different from what Bill is in East Texas, but we're predominantly droughty type country. But a female has got to have the capacity to be able to hold together even in these hard times once she gets into the cow herd.
Um, Great feedback. Let's switch a little bit and talk about when are you making these decisions? When are you deciding at what age is this heifer when you're deciding, am I going to keep her or I'm going to cull her? Joe, do you want to start?
Oh, that's a good question. Right now we're in a pretty severe drought, but we start generally at weaning. Maybe even before weaning, we'll be looking at the cattle herd. But at weaning time, when the cattle come to the pens, we make a decision as to whether she's going to be eligible to go into the replacement females. Those replacement females that meet the quality and temperament and all the things that we're looking for, they'll get the opportunity to be branded with a number brand and a holding brand. And those that don't meet the criteria generally get a holding brand, and they'll be shifted off and more to a feeder type program and either go to the feed yard or go to the sale barn. Recently, the last few years, we've been going to the feed yard with a lot of these cattle and trying to get a little bit more money for them than what we have in the past. But generally, a weaning time is the first option. We carry those cattle on after weaning and try to do the best we can with weaning process, and whether it's in one of our ranches and having to feed or go to grass, whichever, which the last few years there hasn't been a lot of grass. So generally on a feeding program, by the time they get to be eligible to go into the breeding herds or the first exposures on our commercial herds, we've implemented a program of trying to weigh these cattle and trying to make them weigh in excess of 750 pounds before bulls they're ever exposed. If they can't meet that criteria, they're usually cut back, and we'll probably do something else with those heifers.
Bill?
Basically what Joe said, our protocol here is when the heifers come in at weaning, we do keep and cull. Those heifers that are culled will go to the feeder heifer pen, and they're good heifers. They're just not as good as the heifers that we're keeping. Feeder heifers have been bringing a lot of money, but the thing is, when Joe hit the nail on the head a while ago, temperament is a huge, huge deal with all these cattle. And if those heifers come in, and I don't care anymore how good they are, if they're snorting and running at you, they're going to go and be a feeder heifer for somebody else. Because nobody wants that in their herd, because that just breeds genetics that nobody wants. But it's pretty much the same deal. They have got to make that first cut, and they're coming off of mama. You know then if mama has done a good job. If that dam has done her job, that heifer's gonna look really good, be really good. And if that heifer comes in the group where she is not up to the peers of her group, I'm not going to bring her back in if she's been on feed 60 days and go, wow, she's really looking good. No, because mama wasn't milking hard enough to do the job. I don't think that heifer probably will either.
Well, that leads me right into my next question. And we got our first question from the audience too, is how much are their mothers playing into this factor? Are you thinking about their genetics? And we can talk about EPDs in a second, but right now, from a cow family perspective, are you thinking about her mother's temperament, her mother's milking ability, her mother's ability to rebreed?
For us, Emily, yes. I mean, if a cow is not doing her job, I sure don't want to let the heifer out of her. In our size operation, does it happen every once in a while? Yes, but we try to avoid that. The dam has so much. Well, she's half that calf. And if the dam is bad natured, probably going to have a bad natured calf.
Joe, are you thinking about dams when
Oh,
you select heifers?
most definitely. I mean, he's right on. I mean, the dam has so much to do with it. I mean, that calf lives with her for 6 to 8 months or whatever it might be. He's going to live with that mama, and if mama milks, she's generally going to be a good milker. If mama's got a bad temperament, she's probably going to have a bad temperament too. So all these things play together, and it gets to be a real important part of it, how mama acts all the way through. You bet.
Let's
And in our operations too, we're large enough that bad temperaments and cattle that you can't handle really just don't have a place anymore especially with our labor situation where we're at today.
Let's talk about the other side of kind of the genetic potential of an animal. And I know there's definitely two different types of producers on today, both purebred and commercial. Where do EPDs land in your decision-making process, especially on your commercial herd?
Well, Emily, for us, EPDs do play a big part. And when I say this, I want those EPDs coming from a herd where there's enough of them where the EPD is true. And when I say that, I I want to know that the EPDs I'm getting are going to be a fairly true number. Like Briggs Ranch, like Joe and them, we also run a herd of registered cattle. So we're very familiar with our EPDs. Uh, and those EPDs do mean something. When those numbers are put in correct and true, those numbers start meaning a whole lot. And it can make you, especially on what we're talking about today, heifer retention, because where this gets into it is low birth weight bulls with high growth numbers. Those bulls are hard to find. You have to pay for them. But the payback on those bulls is exponential because then you not only have a low birth weight calf, you have a calf that'll grow and become a replacement heifer or a steer that, will actually make a lot of money.
Joe, before you answer that, we got a question in the chat box that we probably should have answered before we asked this question. What is an EPD? So, Joe, before you answer, do EPDs matter? You want to tell us what that is?
Estimated progeny data. It's probably one of the newest things that's come along in the last 15 years or 20 years, whatever it might be. It's data that's given to or put in, especially in the purebred sector. And it's very useful. Everybody needs to remember it's only a tool and it needs to be used as a tool. And like Bill said, when we start looking at trying to buy these herd sires and whatnot, if we can buy the bulls that go to our replacement females or in the cow herds that have the EPDs that we need, weaning weight, yearling weight, milk, ribeye area, all of these things that come into play with an EPD, you can gather that information and take a look and see what is needed. It's very, very useful, more so useful in the purebred sector than maybe in the commercial sector. But if a commercial operator is out there buying bulls to put back in his cow herd, and he selects that I'm going to sell all my calves just straight to the sale barn when we wean these calves, and weaning weight is the most important thing, then you definitely wouldn't want to be trying to find a bull with a negative weaning weight. A negative weaning weight wouldn't be what you're wanting. You want a plus weaning weight so that you can add value to that weaned calf as you move forward. And this is where the EPD comes into play in far as what we look for in ourselves.
Are there other tools that y'all are using, Bill? I know you kind of answered this at the top of the presentation. Besides looking at them physically and besides EPDs or cow families, what else are y'all considering? Are you ultrasounding? Are you pelvic scoring? Other things that go into selecting a replacement female? And do you think those other things are critical?
Yes, here we don't pelvic score, but, and I'm not saying I have the great eye, but we look at when we start keeping these heifers, those heifers have to be really wide behind from hooks to pins. And usually if they are, they have a really good pelvic score. But we go in and we try to calve most of these females at 2. So we've had the bulls out 90 days right now, and we're ultrasounding these heifers. And that way, because with our ultrasound, we can tell exactly when those heifers were bred. And that is something that those early maturing heifers, we want to find out who they are, who's breeding first, because usually the question that you asked a while ago about the cow, that is a inheritable trait. If that dam is really super active like that, her calves most of the time will breed quick. They'll breed right, and it makes for more money because you start getting those calves to hit at that 2 year old. And I'm not saying everybody needs to calve a heifer at 2 year old. Our operation is set up to calve them. Some people need to wait till those heifers are 30 months if they don't have any help or there's no way to really look at those heifers. They may want to go a little farther out there, get a little more maturity on those heifers, so there's potentially not as much problem.
Well, I'll lead into my next question. And that is, and Joe, we'll start with you because Bill just kind of answered this. What age are you breeding? And then secondly, how long are you giving them to breed before you cull them? And do you have a hard cull at that? You know, if they're not bred, we're culling no matter what.
Well, that question has to be addressed by our environmental conditions a lot because, like I said a little bit ago, we're going through some extremely dry periods right now, and getting these heifers bred the first time is quite a challenge. And like Bill, we try to breed most of these heifers to calve as 2 year olds. I mean, we try to get them into the cow herd and get them started. Now, there are occasions where we do have to carry over because of our drought situations and trying to get these heifers up to a weight where I know they're cycling. Right now, we put a lot of emphasis on getting these cattle fed up and get them to that point where we can get them bred. And generally, we try to breed for about 90 days. We've got one division where my son-in-law and my daughter they're breeding heifers now, AIing a group of heifers to low birth weight bulls and doing quite well on that division. Now we've got some other divisions that are a lot drier than what that one is, and we're using a different protocol of trying to get these heifers bred. We're usually giving them about 90 days to get bred, and we try to get them palpated or ultrasound work, as Bill mentioned a little bit ago, has really changed the face of this thing. Well, many of us can miss palpating or calling a heifer bred, first one thing and another. But when you're using this ultrasound data, ultrasound machines and whatnot, and have a veterinarian or technicians that can use this, I mean, it's pretty much a no miss deal. And I've really kind of gotten to where we like that procedure. Not always available to me on the different divisions that we have, but 90 days is generally the time frame that we try to get these heifers bred in. And those that aren't bred, we'll have to reevaluate and try to find out why they didn't breed. If it's a pretty obvious reason why they didn't breed, they'll go to the feeder pen and go on.
Are you keeping a set percentage of replacements every year? You say we're going to keep 25% of our heifer crop every year, or is that a variable number based on environment, economics? What drives your decision on how many to keep? Yeah, Joe,
Well,
you go ahead.
okay, all right. That's Bill. I want you address that, and then I've got a few comments about it too.
Okay. That is, we lose 10% a year of our cow herd. We try to keep a little over 20% of those heifers so we can replace the cows that we lose, plus start replacing some of the older females in the herd to try and get these cows down to a little younger across the herd deal. Some years you'll have that outstanding set of heifers and you keep a few more. Some years your heifers just aren't quite what they were the year before, and we don't keep as many because a lot of this is off visual. If she's not a pretty heifer, nobody else is going to think she's a pretty heifer either. And there's no reason to keep her because if you do have to sell her, nobody's going to really want to pay you the money that it took to raise that female.
Emily, is that good?
That's great.
Okay.
We have had several questions come in. All the same question. What is your thoughts on retaining replacements out of first calf heifers?
Personally, I don't have a problem with it if she's good enough. As long as what that calf meets the criteria that we're looking for, I mean, we'll keep it there. Generally speaking, there's not as big a percentage of heifers out of first calf heifers that make our criteria. But if she meets all the criteria and that heifer's good, I don't have a problem with it. I really don't. Now, jumping back here to something Bill said a little bit ago, and I agree wholeheartedly. Uh, Over the years, a vast majority of our income has been from selling replacement females to other producers. That's been a key part of our whole operation, and we've made a lot of money over that kind of a deal. Generally, as Bill said, I agree with that wholeheartedly. It takes 20% at least of the cow herd of replacement females to go back into the herd to maintain your numbers. And that's what we try to target every year because just like Bill said, you're going to have some old cows that are going to go out. You're going to have some cows that quit milking. You got old cows. You got cows that just came up and didn't have a calf anymore. I mean, there are all kinds of situations that come up in the management field of this. So it takes at least 20% of those heifers to go back into the herd to maintain a cow herd. My opinion only.
That's great. That's what we're here for. Your opinion only. Yours and Bill's. So, okay, we're starting to get a lot of questions in the chat box. So I'm going to ask a few of these and then we can come back to some of ours. You turn your bulls out for 90 days. You pull your bull. How long after that do you ultrasound or palpate?
Uh, 40 days, you know if you have a viable pregnancy. I'm the one that does all the ultrasounding. If I was palpating or maybe didn't know my technician, I would sure wait 45 days because for our listening audience, a heifer after 60 days will have a whole lot better chance of holding that pregnancy all the way to term. A lot of heifers, you take them to your vet or your ultrasound person and they go, yep, that's a 30-day pregnancy. She may or may not hold that pregnancy. It may be absorbed. A lot of things can happen. That is a very, very delicate little deal. And if they're palpating, I would sure recommend waiting at least 45 days. That way, if a person is feeling that little pregnancy, they don't knock it out by feeling it. It's a whole lot better when you're looking at it because I'm not handling that fetus. I'm just looking at it.
And another question that came in, an ultrasound doesn't have to be done by a vet, correct?
No, it does not. And on palpation and ultrasound, I cannot sell a female off of my ultrasound and guarantee her bred. That takes a vet signature. Same way with palpation, but I can do it for myself all day long. The difference between a palpation and the ultrasound, I can actually, if I want to, I can put it on film and film every heifer that walks through there, and you can see the fetus inside of it. You know, you're not taking somebody's word. You can actually look and see that pregnancy right there.
Okay. What characteristics, let's say you kept a heifer, she calved for the first time. What characteristics are you looking for to say, yeah, she's a good first calf heifer? How do I know I'm going to keep her again for a second calf?
Well, for me, answering this may be a little different than Joe's, but I don't think so. One, that she can milk. Two, she holds her body condition together. Because the first calf heifer is going to drop body score, but we don't want that heifer train wrecking. When I say that, you have a heifer or two out there that they just fall completely apart. Most of the time, those heifers won't rebreed. Those heifers that maintain their body score long as their nutrition is adequate, most of the time those heifers will rebreed. But the heifers that just fall completely apart, they're more than likely will not rebreed in a timely manner.
I think that's well said across the board. Of course, our ranching environment is quite a bit different because it's pretty droughty and pretty hard, but that body condition on those first calf heifers is so important. And whether you're going to supplement it with grain or whether you're going to supplement it with, we do a lot of alfalfa hay for one deal on one ranch, just because environmental conditions are so terrible. But Bill is exactly right. If you can't keep the body condition on that heifer, you're going to have a hard time getting her bred back. But that young heifer, if you're treating her right and she's got the ability to raise the kind of calf that you want, I mean, there's not hardly any reason not to give her the opportunity to get back into the cow herd. It's getting her rebred that's a big challenge.
Very.
Okay, I've got another question from the audience. At what age or weight do you breed a heifer for the first time?
I think Joe commented real good on it. They've got to be at least 750 pounds and would actually like them to be a little bigger than that. We would like those heifers to be pushing just a little heavier than that, because if they're not, they're probably not going to be mature enough inside to get bred. That's going to be a little immature heifer that will probably take a long time to breed. Not saying she won't, but it's going to take a while. And like Joe said a while ago, 750 is sure enough that cutoff.
That's pretty well the minimum on our program in the commercial herds. I mean, I'm like Bill, I'd a whole lot rather she weighed 8.5 to 9, but that's the minimum on our deal at 750. On the purebred heifers, I'd really rather have a minimum of 8.25 that they weigh before that, because the purebreds have it just takes a little bit more to get everything done. As far as age, you're probably looking at 16, 18 months of age, before you're going to reach that. In our environment, that's about where you're going to be after trying to help those heifers get to the age where they're going to start cycling.
Oh man, we are getting some really great questions in the chat box. Okay, after a heifer calves, how long should you wait to turn the bull back out? How long do you give those cows to recoup, and what do you do in the meantime to make sure they're ready to rebreed?
For us, or for me, that bull would go back out within 30 days of her calving, because a lot of these heifers, with the genetics that have been produced over the last 10 to 20 years, we have a lot of these females, if they are in shape, will breed 30 to 40 days after calving. Because if that heifer had no problems calving and her nutrition is right, good chance she could go on and come back in 40 days to 45 and have a really good breeding heat. It's all environment. But if those cattle are in really good shape, no calving problems, I would sure expect them to start having their first estrus in 40 to 45 days.
I think that's pretty well said. What Bill has told you. We kind of have a set breeding program or breeding time frames, and we kick the bulls out generally speaking, those heifers 45 days after they've calved, they're going to be getting back in place. If you've done your job of taking care of her and environmental conditions are there, then she's going to get ready to start being rebred. And once it's the time frame for us to kick bulls out on our breeding programs, uh, she should fit right in back into that program.
A question that kind of goes off of that is, let's say you've AI'd once or twice and they haven't stuck. How do you make that decision? Is this an AI problem or is this a cow problem? How are you making that decision and helping her to get bred?
You want to start that one, Joe?
Repeat that question again, please. I missed
Okay,
it.
let's say you've AI'd once or twice and they're not sticking. How do I determine, is this a AI error or is this a cow problem?
Okay. Well, I've got some really great young people working for me right now that have really gotten to be good at AI, but AI fits into our program, but it's a one-time deal. I mean, we're gonna AI that heifer or that cow one time. And then after that, we're turning the bulls in because she's gonna have about a 90-day or when we can, as soon as we can catch those bulls or in our situation, 90 days to get bred. And we expect her to do, but we're just gonna AI her one time. This years ago, long years ago, you AI'd on a female until you just got tired of it. And all it did was throw us further and further behind. So our deal now is we're going to AI her one time. We're going to put one round into her. She's going to have a short period of time there. So you got an interval between the time that you AI'd and the bulls go in, so we can dictate about whether it was AI or whether it was natural breeding. And then the bulls are going in because I need a calf to sell at some point in time. Bill?
Well, I agree with everything Joe said, but AI is, yes, nutrition on the female will probably dictate 75% of what your conception rate is. How that semen is handled, how good your technician is at doing it, all those play a part. If you do it one time, you're going to be a lot happier with the bull out there. We breed from 500 to 600 heifers a year AI. The bulls, and we're different from Joe and them, the bulls are going out just, those heifers are out of heat. When we turn them out back into the pasture, the bulls are out there waiting on them. Because I do not want to give up one day. I need these heifers to be in my cows having windows so those calves sell with my mature cow herd. The heifers have been doing such a good job for the last number of years that we get back on a question you'd asked earlier in this, we get a lot of replacement females out of our first calf heifers, and we get a lot of heavyweight steers out of those heifers. And I've got to have those heifers because of the number that we calve out. I hear people all the time say, oh, we just sell those first calf heifer calves when they get about 250, 300 pounds. I can't afford to do that. Those heifers, because of genetics that are in them, because of what they're supposed to do, those ought to be, they won't quite be as heavy as our mature cows, but they ought to be just as good in quality. They're just a little lighter, and when they hit that feed, they come on and do just like the rest of the calf.
I do want to talk about something that y'all both have mentioned, that anytime we get the opportunity to mention the importance of a breeding and calving season, there's a lot of people that may not have a defined season. Maybe they leave their bulls with their cows, 365 days out of the year. Why is that important that we only turn our bulls out for 60 to 90 days? Can y'all speak to that relevance?
It kind of comes down to management. it gives you the opportunity on a set breeding program to determine when you're going to calve, when you're going to wean, and then it also enhances what you're going to be able to do about marketing that product. You know, whether we're going to sell this cow as a cow calf pair, or you're going to sell this as her weaned calf, it sets up a marketing program for you, and it gets down to dollars and cents on that part of it. Bill?
I'd agree 100%. And it also all depends on the country in which you're running these cattle and how many cattle you have. I'm sure we're talking to some producers that are very limited on the amount of country that they're running. And some people do have a small herd. They're not ever going to sell a truckload lot. They'll leave their bulls out for a longer period, maybe all year long. But in stating that, my one recommendation would be every year that bull or bulls need to be pulled up. They need to be fertility and trick tested every year, because that can make or break you. And especially on a small herd of cows where you're not dealing with many, an infertile bull or a trick contamination could actually wipe you out.
These small herds, and Bill is exactly right, that semen testing those bulls and trick testing, because if you lose a calf crop just because you failed to do one of these two items, you can't blame anyone else. You can't blame the cows for the problem, but losing the calf crop because of one of those problems is pretty tough. And we are dealing with a lot of smaller producers today than what we probably ever have before in our history of operations.
Okay. When do you think is an ideal time for calves to be born? And then when are you putting your bulls in subsequently?
Well, I'm going to start this one, Joe, because I know it'll be a little different for you. It depends on what part of the country that you live in. In the East Texas area where all of our ranches are, optimum time to calve is between October and about, actually, I'd love the last calf to be born the first day of April. We're not quite in that, but we're almost, because we get very hot and humid here. The cows will not do good on this old wheat grass that we have in this country. Those later calves will not weigh near what the calf window that I gave you. I know it's different for every part of the country, and as to when your grasses really get stout and the weeds really get stout.
Well, Emily, on our operations, of course, the last 10 years, the drought situations have really dictated a lot of the calving. Ideally, on our situation, the latter 2 weeks of January, February, and March was the ideal time for me to calve the spring calving cows. We have a fall group of cattle that calving seasons too, and we've backed that up somewhat. We used to try to start calving them in September, but it's just too hot. So really ideal if we could get the vast majority of those calves in October, November, we'll calve those fall calving cows. Now, at one time we had a ranching operation in Oklahoma, and we went. I had to go from severe heat to severe cold in dealing with that operation up there, and it's a totally different calving interval than what would get into down here in South Texas. So environment is going to play a big part of when we're going to be calving these females.
Okay, a follow-up to that question that we just got. What environment is prime for calving? Is it best to calve when your grass is best or shortly before your grass is best?
In East Texas, if you can calve a calf in October and November, that calf will probably do better at the sale barn or however you sell that calf, because that calf will be old enough to utilize the spring green up where we have all of our weeds, our grasses, very tender coming out, and they're pushing at 18 to 22% protein. They'll get a tremendous amount of free gain on having calf barn milk.
You know, our down in this deep South Texas country, generally speaking, we'll start getting a little bit better late February, March, April. If I can calve that female out latter part of January, February, you know, she's going to have time to get that calf up and go to nursing, and then she's going to take advantage of that grass when it starts to come. But let me assure you, about the last 3 years, there hadn't been much grass coming in the springtime, so it's a little different situation.
Okay, we're going to keep going because we're getting a lot of good questions in. What I'm going to do a 2-for-1 question here. What do you do with your bulls when they are not with your cow herd? And the second part of this, a different question submitted, can your fertility of your bulls change when they are not with your cows?
Uh, all of our bulls on Stalwart, we have bull pastures. When we start pulling bulls, they all go to the bull pastures, and our operation is larger. So we have a young bull pasture that'll be 3-year-olds and under, and then we have an older bull pasture that'll be 4s to better. Yes, the fertility on those bulls, when they come off of cows, we have every bull is off of a cow. By July the 10th, there's not a bull left on cows. When you first pull them, those bull semen's probably not going to be real stout. By the time we fertility test in November, that fertility is coming back up. And fertility goes down the hotter it gets. If you test your bulls in July and August, they're probably not going to have a good fertility test. Those bulls need to be fertility when the weather is a little cooler. Summertime is awfully hard. It's awfully hard to get a bull collected. And it's really hard to get them to pass with a really good passing semen test grade.
In answer to that question on our position, we have bull pastures too, and the bulls are pulled off and put in those pastures, and we try to take a little extra care of them, feed those bulls up, and try to get them back in good condition while they are off the cows. And he's exactly right. The heat's just hard on the bull as far as the semen evaluation and whatnot is going to be. So I mean, everything that Bill just told you is exactly right. I mean, it's you've got to take care of these bulls to keep them in the right kind of condition to be useful the next season.
Well, and I want to add on to that too. And I want y'all to speak to this. Let's say I buy a bull, let's say I go to Stalwarts or Briggs and I buy a bull and he's got a good semen test. That doesn't mean that he's going to be fertile for the rest of his life. If I buy him at 18 months and he's got a good semen test, I don't have to test him for the next 8 years. Or
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Just because he passed when he was a youngster doesn't mean he's going to pass when he's a 4 or 5-year-old, because there are too many injuries out there that can happen.
Yeah. So I
Well,
mean, y'all would recommend yearly
every
tests?
year those bulls have to be tested. And most people that sell bulls give you a season or a year that they guarantee those bulls. Use that guarantee, but I mean, most of those bulls, barring an accident, if they had a really good fertility test, they're going to be good. If they get injured, it could change, but you've got to test them. And the other deal, and Joe related to it, when you pull those bulls, I don't care if they're an old bull or a young bull, you have got to get those bulls in shape to go back to breeding cows when you turn them back out. And when I say this, do not get the bulls over fat. That can be just as good as too thin. You want those bulls in really good shape. And I know that that's every person's eye, but if those bulls are in really good shape, you'll get the optimum breeding value out of them.
Well, and to add on to that, Bill, they got to be the right age too. You can't kick a 10-month-old bull out with 40 cows and hope for the best.
Well, and we have so many people, I mean, Greg selling bulls or us selling bulls. We sell a lot of yearling bulls anymore to breed. And yes, we'll turn some of those yearlings out with an older bull. And main thing is the older bull's going to breed most of those cows because those little bulls are pestering him to death, and he goes on and gets his lazy self up and goes and breeds. But those little bulls need more care when they're jerked back off those cows than that 4 or 5 year old bull. And that's why I said we have 2 different bull pastures so we can take care of those younger bulls and get them to go on and grow off to their full mature size that they should be. And that bull is the cheapest thing on your plate. And when I say that, with calves bringing roughly at $2,000, and that bull goes and breeds 25 cows, you can afford to give a little more for that bull. But when you give a little more for him, you really want to take care of him. You don't want to just throw him out to the wolves. And if you'll take care of these young bulls, you'll find out you get more years of service out of them.
You've definitely got to take care of those young bulls because they're very, very vulnerable at that stage in their life. And you're having to invest a lot of money into these younger bulls today, more so than what we have in the past. And rightfully so, because the calves that we're selling today are bringing so much more. So it's advantageous to you to buy better bulls and take better care of them all the way through.
Oh, we have got such a great question, and y'all are going to have strong opinions on this one. What's your opinion on purebred versus commercial bulls, and why buy purebred bulls?
I can start that one off. Purebred versus a commercial bull. That purebred bull, I'm going to have an EPD on him, and I'm going to know his parentage. And anymore, I know that Joe was in red and the black world. We are strictly black world. If we have off-colored calves, they cannot go on a load for us. We sell 100% black, so I'm going to take a $200 hickey on every off-colored calf that I have. When you have a commercial bull, yes, you may know his pedigree, but there may be something in that pedigree that will produce a red, white in the wrong place, and he may not breed true to what he looks like. Genetics, you get genetic predictability, and that's what you're paying for when you go to these registered sales or you go private treaty and buy a bull. You are buying that animal so that you have a better idea of what that calf will look like and how that calf will perform. And with the commercial bull, he may be just absolutely beautiful to look at. But unless you know what his pedigree is, he may have a hole that you could drive a semi through. And are you willing to risk that just because he was $1,000 or $2,000 cheaper because if he wrecks your calving, he could have cost you way more than that.
That's pretty well said. Commercial bulls, somebody's just trying to beat the game. I mean, you've got on this purebred deal, buying bulls, get the information. I mean, find a place where you're going to go buy bulls that gathers information, performance information, EPDs, things of this nature, like Bill is iterating to, that mean something to you or to whomever's going to be buying your calves. Just to go down to the sale barn and buy a bull just to throw out with a set of cows, those days are gone. They're over. I mean, you have got to know what these bulls can do and can't do or will do for you. And it all comes back to performance and believing in the people that you go buy bulls from. Those bad information that's input is bad information. But you find a producer that you like and hit the cattle will work for you and they keep good records and everything else, you're going to be successful in the long run.
Well, it's 1:57. We're supposed to end at 2 o'clock, but we still have a lot of questions left to go. So Joe, Bill, if y'all have got 5 or 10 more minutes, we're going to keep going. Are y'all good?
I can handle it.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay, great. Next question that we have a small herd of 30 head of cows. How many bulls do you recommend per cow?
For me, I would recommend 2 bulls. And I say this, things can go wrong. If that bull bruises a testicle and you go, how did he do that? Well, he went jogging across the pasture and wrapped it on his leg way too hard. If he bruises it, he's going to have a lot less potential to breed those cows. If you have 2 bulls out there, anything happens to one, you're still getting all those cows bred. And with one bull, if anything goes wrong, you could miss an entire calf crop.
That's exactly right. I had some old friends that ranched in far west Texas years ago. And their theory of bulls to the cows were 3 bulls to a water hole. Well, that was fine in their environment, but I mean, they were ranching on 200,000 acres, and that's not very many producers are doing that anymore. But as Bill said, 30 cows probably need 2 bulls because anything can happen. And once something happens to a bull, takes an injury, it's going to take 45 days for him to really kind of recover, if he recovers at all. And 45 days in a short breeding season can really put you in a financial bind.
Agreed. Okay. I think I know the answer to this question, but I want you to answer it from a small producer perspective as well. Do you AI based on visual heat or fixed time AI? I think I probably know the answer for both of y'all, but what do you think is an appropriate answer for a small herd?
Well, if they are breeding off of a natural heat that they see, their conception rate is going to be twice as good as those of us who are time breeding many animals at one time. Their conception rate will probably jump somewhere between 25 and 30% over the top of what the time breeding is.
No doubt about that. A visual heat, standing heat, years ago in AI, that's exactly what we had to do. But in today's time, in our situation where labor is so tight and we've got so much that we have to do, time breeding has gotten to be what we have to do to get it done. As Bill said, if you could find that standing heat, that'd probably be the best way to go. But I don't have that kind of time to dedicate to it anymore.
What age do you wean your calves?
We wean ours from, I know this sounds bad. Theoretically, should wean them at 7 months old. due to the way we sell our calves, those calves will be from 7 months to 9 months. There's going to be a 60-day window in there that, yes, the perfect world, they'd all be weaned at 7 months old. But they're going to be a 60-day gap on a lot of ours, especially on our fall calves. Our spring calves, we'll pretty much hit them at 7 months old.
That's pretty true on our operation too. 7 to 9 months usually gets it. In some of these big pastures that we have, we might miss one and we won't catch him till he's a 10 month or maybe even more. But in the drought situation that we've been in the last while, we worked the pasture not too long ago, and I told the guys, I said, we're going to wean any calf that weighs 400 or better just to get him off the cow so we can salvage that. So I help that cow get along. So it gets down to the point, it's not exactly just in our operation a time of age. It's when we're going to try to do that at age 7 to 9 months, but environmental conditions are going to dictate that we may have to do it earlier. So, I mean, everything has to play into part.
Okay.
And Emily, answering one more of that, because this is Heifers 101, is
Right.
when you're weaning heifers, it's just what Joe said. It's environmental and how that animal is looking. If that animal's having a hard time, that calf needs to come off sooner so that animal can repair and so she can breed back.
On that note, we're starting to get a lot of questions in about nutrition. Y'all are taking it down a nutrition route. So I've got a few questions here from a nutrition standpoint. Once they're weaned, what's your nutrition protocol? How long do you leave them on feed? Do you continue to feed them until they calve? And then post calving, what's your feed versus grass protocol here throughout their life?
You want to start it, Joe? You want me to?
Go ahead. I'll back it up.
Our protocol is we wean, we'll put these calves on a high roughage ration. They're going to be fed from 60 to 90 days. Then those heifers and steers will go to grass. Our grass, we try to keep really, really good grass under these heifers that we're keeping. We'll plant cover crops in the fall for those heifers so that we do get a really good breed up on them. Because the better we can take care of them, the better they'll mature, the more they'll weigh, the more we'll get bred. I can't afford to feed an animal all the way through. That doesn't work for me. I know in some instances people can get away with it, but for us, it just doesn't work that way.
I won't agree with him wholeheartedly. When we wean these calves, when they come off the cows, they're given a IBR shot. They go to the weaning pen, high roughage ration. 2-3 weeks later, we give them another round of IBRs to back the calves up. Now, this is steers and heifers. Generally, we try to keep them on feed for at least 60 days, maybe 90. The sooner I can get them off feed, the better if I've got the grass. And as I've kind of mentioned earlier, we're in a pretty bad drought situation on most of our divisions, and grass it's been hard. So with that said, we've had to feed these cattle a lot more than what we have in the past. Because going to grass is by far the cheapest way that we can do that. But here again, we ranch in some pretty droughty country. So we've had to feed our heifers this last 2 years, really, way more than what I would like to do, because you just add more and more money to the mix.
Well, great. I think we've got most of our questions answered. If you have questions that we didn't get answered and you still have burning questions on replacement females, you can email us and we can connect you with the speakers or other ranchers in your area. You can email us education@tscra.org and we will try to get your questions answered over the coming week or so. So Bill, Joe, thank y'all so much for your valuable insight. We had over 100 people watching today, so a big impact made today, and appreciate y'all's time.
You're
Thank
quite
you.
welcome. Quite welcome.
All right, thanks, y'all.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.